Hey guys, what is up, and I welcome each and every one of you to a new League of Legends video. So it is that time once again where a new patch has rolled out to League of Legends, and I'm sure most people are wondering which champions are currently the strongest or the FREELO type champions to play in the current patch. Which ones should you watch out for? Should you ban? Should you pick up? Should you be happy if they're on your team? Be kind of scared and consider dodging on the enemy team and things like that. So hopefully this video will get you covered on that, on top of also giving you a few honorable mentions that I also think you should definitely look out for. Now this video will be made in collaboration with ProGuides, a fantastic website which I have a link down below to a free trial, a website that tries to improve your overall League of Legends gameplay and knowledge. I have a link to them down below in the description below. Definitely recommend checking them out and trying out their free trial. But without much further ado, let's get right into the FREELO champions of this current patch. So to start things off, I want to talk about Jace. Jace can be played either in the top lane or the mid lane, so it almost doesn't even really matter where you want to put him. But he's definitely beginning to show his dominance, especially in the top lane, being able to just simply outdamage almost every other top laner, put a lot of pressure in the lane, get the towers early, and get the snowball going. But what makes Jace even better for this current patch is the fact that lethality did get buffed. The lethality is better on Jace, it's a fantastic stat on him, and the items that you normally want to get on Jace, maybe like a Youmu's, a nice edge, even sometimes in very rare scenarios a Duskblade, well, all of these items are just simply better now. So all of this on top of Jace just having a lot of prowess within his kit, being able to just simply dominate his lane, he is a very strong champion. Also, looking at the champions currently strong down in the bot lane, Varus is a pretty popular pick. Maybe the mid lane something like Corgi, also a very popular pick. Jace synergizes with these champions well enough because there is going to be a lot of poke coming out of your team. It's extremely difficult to deal with, especially in solo queue, and a lot of teams will simply not know what to do. And on top of this, if you ever snowball with Jace, which you probably will pretty frequently, he will do an insane amount of damage very quickly, whether you're diving in for the kill or you're poking them from afar. So with all that being said, let's take a quick look at what kind of build you want to do when playing Jace. So you definitely want to opt in for that Thunderlords because it just adds more to your overall burst and your potential to actually just dominate the laning phase. And again, for items, you want to go a different combination, just kind of depends on what you're facing, but the ones you see here, the Youmu's, your Lucidity Boots, and your Black Cleaver are already giving you 40%. Nice Edge giving you that fantastic new buff now, which has a much lower cooldown on top of the lethality combining with the Youmu's plus the Black Cleaver is going to be very deadly. Then you finish off the Last Whisper and you're going to be shredding through almost any single person. The last item can be either Bloodthirster for lifesteal and just more damage, or the safe route being a Guardian's Angel. But moving into champion number 2, I also want to talk about Camille while staying in the top lane. Camille is still a fairly new champion to League of Legends, and a lot of people are still trying to grasp her and understand how to play against her because, well, if she goes off, she can do some very spectacular things. And currently the meta has a lot of very immobile type champions, whether it's the mid lane or the ADC role, and Camille's ultimate makes it just that much easier to lock them down and just wail away at them, killing them without too much difficulties. Her true damage on her Q ability is great when facing a lot of the tanks, on top of her W and her ultimate having that percent damage. And all in all, Camille is just still a very good champion, can do a lot, can carry games pretty hard as well, and you probably just don't want to risk facing her just yet until maybe another nerf is found, or maybe some better way to deal with her and counter her is found instead. So with all of that being said, let's check out the build you want to do when running Camille. Forever of Battle is a great keystone because you pretty much just work off of attack speed with the Trinity Force you also get from your items. You even want to throw in some attack speed in your runes again because you're all about the attack speed damage. You want to proc your ultimate as often as possible when you actually have that extra percent damage ticking in, and it just simply works, and it just makes her feel very fluid and fun to play. But next up, let's jump over to the mid lane very quickly and talk about one very specific champion, LeBlanc. Now there's definitely quite a bit of champions in the mid lane that are considered to be quite good, but one that really kind of sticks out and one that you just simply don't want to have to face, especially if you're the mid lane player, is definitely LeBlanc. I mean, this champion can do a lot. Granted, I do believe she is more difficult to play because of just the sheer amount of things you can now do and the different ways you can approach a situation, and knowing which way is the better way or the best way. She is still a very scary champion. champion having a very strong laning phase as well, and if you ever get the perfect combo of landing your W in a team fight on a 3 to 5 people on the enemy team and then throwing in your Q, you're just going to be watching all of their HP just simply plummet. All in all, LeBlanc is just still a very scary and feared champion in the mid lane, and it's just not one you want to face because of the slightest mistake, well, chances are you already lost your lane and maybe even lost your team the game. But let's take a quick look at LeBlanc's items and overall build, just like every other champion. Thunderlords, without question, it's pretty much a no-brainer. For your items, Morellonomicon is great for that 20% CDR and just the early power spike, and then you can go for items like a Luden's Echo, Rabadon's, Void Staff. Zhonya's is great, but if you're feeling extra spicy and you want to really make things interesting, you can replace one of those items like the Luden's Echo or the Zhonya's with the Lichbane instead. It sounds a little bit weird at first, but trust me, if you get the playstyle right, it's extremely effective. Next up, we're gonna go all the way into the jungle where, as usual, there's just a handful of champions we have to discuss. The first champion I want to talk about is going to be Hecarim, a very familiar name by now because I just seem to always bring him up because he's just always very, very strong. I said this in the last video and I'll say it again, Hecarim is at the point where he can just simply build pure tank with one damage item being Trinity Force and still not only do a lot of damage, have fantastic gap close, have good wave clear, or I guess jungle clear in this case, have pretty good ganking potential as well. His ultimate gives him some insanely strong gap closing potential, and for the most part the idea is the fact that he can get to the backline, dish out a lot of damage, but be probably the most difficult champion to kill on his team. All of this into one package makes for a very deadly champion, one that I personally almost always ban if I have to, just because of how scary he is and just because of how many games I have lost to this damn pony. So with all that being said and done, let's take a very quick look at the build. Courage of the Colossus is still most likely your go-to because it just gives you exactly what you want, and there's just no other real keystone other than maybe Thunderlords that is just as intriguing. But other than that, like I said, for items, Triforce is your main damage one, while you have maybe some somewhat semi-damage items like Deadman's Plate, but for the most part, Triforce, your main source of damage, everything else is just tankiness to make you just last in that fight as long as possible. And oh boy is it effective. But chilling in the jungle for just a bit more, I also want to talk a bit about Rengar. Now, Rengar has also been an assassin type champion in the jungle that's been just simply dominant. Especially if you go the warrior Deadman's Plate build on him, he does a lot of damage. He's actually pretty damn difficult to kill because of the Deadman's Plate, and it just feels actually very difficult to deal with him. If you then also take into account how much his W can potentially heal him, plus it also removes CC, and on top of this, his ultimate also gives him that free critical strike. I mean, it does combine for a champion that seems to have a lot in his kit and just feels a little bit difficult to deal with. I'm not sure how many of you guys face this sort of offensive and tanky Rengar builds where pretty much every item gives you offensive and defensive stats, again like Deadman's, Knight's Edge, Black Cleaver. It's very, very strong and it can do just so much. And if the person actually really truly understands how to play Rengar, I'm almost positive he can quite easily solo carry games. So all in all, this is also a champion you want to definitely watch out for, and you definitely do not want him ahead because he has a very, very good potential to not only just make your life extremely just horrible, but also hard carry his team. So let's take a very, very quick look at the current Rengar build that you want to run. Thunderlords without question is the keystone that you want to go for. Your runes are pretty standard flat AD, and then you want to go for the items like the warrior enchantment with the red smite, Deadman's Plate, Lucidity, Knight's Edge, Black Cleaver, GA, and something along the lines of that. But next to Rengar, we also have another very effective jungle champion at the very moment, Rengar's rival, Kha'Zix. So this spot was extremely difficult for me to decide between Kha'Zix and Zac because I actually think both of them are equally as strong, and one of them can hard carry a game while the other one maybe may not, and vice versa, and it honestly was very difficult to decide which one to put in, but I figured I put Zac in the last video, so for this one let's put in Kha'Zix. But in all honesty, I'm actually seeing Kha'Zix banned in almost every single game that I'm currently playing in ranked rather than Zac. So that in itself already made me sort of convinced that yeah, maybe Kha'Zix is just simply the better champion at the very moment, especially now with the lethality buffs again to Duskblade, to Knight's Edge, to Youmuu's, all of which are items that Kha'Zix can without question build just depending on the current scenario and the game that he's in. But regardless, Kha'Zix still has fantastic jungle clear. I mean, it's not the best in the world, but it's definitely good enough. His ganking potential is still just as good as ever, and his Q ability, especially if you upgrade it first, not only can you solo dragon very early, but if you happen to find someone in the jungle by themselves, well, the damage on it, especially with how low the cooldown is just extremely difficult to duel. There's been a lot of instances, especially some more recently, where I've seen Kha'Zix jump in for the kills maybe around level 5 or so, and the damage that the Q does is just, it really is horrific. It's just a scary sight to see. But regardless, I mean, there's not much more to say because Kha'Zix has been known to be a top tier jungler for several patches now. It just so happens that he's here once again, ready to go. So of course, with that being said, let's take a very quick look at his build. The Warrior enchantment plus also getting the Knight's Edge, the Duskblade, and maybe even throwing in a Youmuu's instead of Knight's Edge, just depending on what you're facing, is what you usually want to do. Again, remember, 2 of these 3 items, if not maybe all 3 of them if you somehow for whatever reason choose to get them, are all pretty much buffed because of the lethality, and also Knight's Edge and Duskblade receiving specific buffs to themselves as well. Flat AD runes and Thunderlords being also quite simple stuff there, but in terms of what you want to evolve, I'm actually really starting to like evolving Q first, followed by E, and then usually your ultimate. And the last champion I want to talk about before going into several honorable mentions is going to be all the way down in the bot lane, Malzahar support. Now as far as I'm aware, I don't believe he received any nerfs whatsoever in this current patch, so without question, I mean, he is still going to be a dominant force down in the bot lane as a support champion because of just how much damage he can offer, the CC he can provide, and just the overall annoyance his Voidlings can also bring into his kit. The great thing about Malzahar down in the bot lane is because, well, he's still extremely useful with his ultimate, just simply pressing that R button and locking someone down for his team to wail away at, but you can still, chances are, build that new cheap Rallies, which is just a lot easier to get, the Andre's Torment, and those are really the only 2 core items that you truly need in order to be an actual decent threat, especially as a support champion. So with all that being put together, I mean, he does definitely make for a very, very scary champion down on the bot lane, so even to this day, I still see Malzahar banned extremely frequently, and if he's not banned, well, chances are he will be picked. If not, then it's something probably like Misfortune support or something along the lines of that. But regardless, let's take a very quick look at Malzahar's build. You want to go for the Thunderlords because it does give you that extra lane pressure which you really want, especially down in the bot lane, and your items start off a little bit supporty with the sight stun, but then you transition into essentially an AP mid laner with the Rallies, the Void Staff, Rabadons, Morellonomicon, and whatever else your heart desires. Alright, now before we end off the video, I do want to go over some very quick honorable mentions, the first of which being Jhin. I have not talked about any ADC in this video whatsoever, so I felt like it's not only necessary to actually bring up an ADC, but I feel like Jhin is still in actually a pretty damn good spot, and I actually still see him being picked very frequently. The reason is simple. I mean, there's a lot of very popular and strong immobile ADCs like himself, Varus, maybe even Ashe or something, and Meph. But the thing about Jhin is the fact that he can also do a lot of damage and be very useful from a very far distance, which is very unique to his kit. Following this, I want to quickly talk about the new reworked Warwick. I mean, I actually don't feel like he's all that weak, but he's not necessarily overpowered either. He's in a pretty good spot. If ahead, he's very difficult to deal with, but if behind, he's actually very easy to deal with. But all in all, I mean, this is probably not a champion you want to have to face and maybe even have on your team in certain occasions, so for the most part, if you really have to, you might want to ban him out. And finally, 2 very quick honorable mentions over in the top lane, Nautilus and Maokai, the 2 absolute kings when it comes to tanky champions, chilling in the top lane and being essentially the initiators for their team. These guys have a lot of CC in their kit, they do their job very effectively, they're extremely hard to kill, and they're just simply obnoxious to face. So if you ever need to fill in the tank role as a top laner, Nautilus, Maokai, without question, your 2 go-to champions. But either way, guys, that is about it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button to show your support, especially if you want me to continue doing this every other patch. But again, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you for my next video. Peace.